Well, I am kin to most everybody. They used to say that in Aiken because my grandmother was a Cushman, and the other part, my dad was a Holley. So the Holley's been here like over 200 years, and the Cushmans have been also. So I'm kin to both these families. Anyway, my name's Olivia Holley Maxwell, and that's my name. And we're going to talk about the Cushmans, not the Hollies. That's who I like to talk about, but whatever.
Okay, my name is Margaret Gaver Wilson, and my grandparents were the Gettings Cushman, and they lived here for years and years and years, and I grew up here, and I'm here today to show a house, a drawing of the house that I grew up in.
Nice.
And I haven't lived here in 100 years.
There you go.
Well, the Cushman, we'll just talk about them because we can't get into too much the Hollies. We'd be here all day. But the Cushman, I know my mother used to drag me around when we were little to visit all the relatives, and then she would tell us about this person and that person. But J.B. Cushman lived in Montmorency, and Margie and I have a picture of the house and of the children. But anyway, they lived in Montmorency, and he was I think he was a cotton farmer because he owned a lot of land. He was very wealthy. And then from there came the Cushman children, who was Margie's grandfather, my grandmother, and then 3 other siblings, or maybe 4. One of them died early, so I didn't know that person. But there were the 3 houses together that she brought the artifact from. There was Uncle Gettings, who's Margie's grandfather, and Aunt Ethel, that was, she was Cushman that married a Dukes. And then Ed Cushman, who he used to be the son of Ed Cushman, was a senator in Aiken. So that was Ed Cushman, Aunt Ethel Cushman Dukes, and Gettings Cushman. All 3 had houses right together on Park Avenue.
Oh.
Well, my folks divorced, and we came from Ohio down here. My mother came down here to live with her family in that house, and that was in 1945. So I grew up in that house from there until I left to go to college. So there's so many different memories. We had 2. My grandfather was in the Gulf Oil Distributorship here for Aiken and our surrounding areas, I assume. Anyway, we had 2 black men that worked with and for my grandfather, but did everything. One would drive him every now and then, and they just did everything around the house because my grandfather wasn't able to. And but I have stories of them in the. There was a big fire at the depot, which is was half a block away from my house. There was a big fire in the depot, and I don't know when that was, but it must have been the late 30s. And there was a lot of oil in there for my grandfather. And so what happened is they realized what was going to happen. And these 2 men went into the fire, but one of them, Robert, got burned pretty badly. And so I grew up, and I obviously looked at him and knew there was something wrong. And I always heard that story that he went in to get this fire away from the oil tank, oil drums. Anyway, but we also had this massive garage in the backyard where all these transport trucks would park at night. My mother was 12 when Willie Mae Wilson came to live with us, and
she was a black woman.
She grew up in Augusta, and I always heard stories that she had actually seen who was it that came through and burned everything? Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know whether that's truly or not, but
Well, he didn't come to Aiken, did he?
he went to Augusta. Didn't he come through Augusta?
I
don't know. Anyway, Grandpa built her a house behind our house, and it was a nice little house, and it had, a living room. It had a dining room. Of course, it had its own bathroom, and she stayed with us until after everybody was gone. Mm-hmm. And the last thing she did is I found yesterday a copy of the program for her funeral. But she stayed with us for the whole 45 years as I read her obituary. Mm-hmm. I was gone by then. But anyway, my brother and I played there. We had over the living room, over the dining room table, we had this massive stained glass round thing over the dining room. Mm-hmm. And somebody always told me it was a Tiffany something. Of course, it's gone now. So if it was a Tiffany something, somebody's very rich. But we lived upstairs, and Grandma and Grandpa lived downstairs. And we always, one of the nicest memories I have is that we had a lovely dining room table, and there was a tea cart at the end of it. And no matter what time of the day or night you came into the house, there was a fresh pitcher, silver pitcher of ice cold water on that. So that was one of Willie Mae's functions. Willie Mae did not read or write, and I spent many an hour trying to teach her how to do that. Mm-hmm. And we were awful, my brother and I. We were not very nice kids. And in the pantry, we thought it was great fun to move everything around because she knew where she put things.
Oh.
We get a big star for that.
That is so mean.
It was. Willie Mae would sit with us for hours if we were sick. She was just a joy. And my grandparents were very kind and nice.
Yeah, and I remember her grandmother mainly. Her name was Louis, and she was a de Medici. Mm-hmm. And I keep thinking, the de Medicis in Italy, but Margie said they were from France, but whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my mother would drag us around to see all the relatives. Aunt Louis, we'd go see her. And by then, Uncle Gettings had died. And that was Margie's grandfather in the cushion. Mm-hmm. And so I remember Aunt Louis was such a stately, beautiful woman. And look, I remember Willie Mae and all that. So we're third cousins. And I didn't really know Margie Lou until we got to high school because they were always upstairs when I'd go with my mother to see Aunt Louis. I never really saw them. Mm-hmm. The house was beautiful. Nice. And then the next house we'd visit was Aunt Ethel. She was a Cushman, so she lived like a few doors down in one of the houses. Now hers was more Victorian looking. It wasn't that Grecian architecture. Mm-hmm. And then Uncle Ed, we didn't visit them much. Mama must not have liked his wife or something. But anyway, Uncle Ed lived in that house that's kind of Grecian, but it has a red roof to it.
It's all brick too, isn't it? It's all brick.
No, I don't remember. We'll have to drive back by. Yeah. But whatever. So there was 3 little houses, and we'd go. My mother would drag me and my sister, visit all the relatives, and they lived right in the road, so that was easy.
Yeah, nice.
But I do want to interject this fun thing though. We had a park. Is all that part of Aiken has parks in between the blocks. This is Marion Street. Uh-huh. Oh. And out in the middle of the park, we dug a ditch, or what we would call a fire pit now. And that's where the group would gather. But one of my neighbors was Skipper Perry. Skipper and my brother were the same age, and then Mary Ann, his sister, and I were the same age. And Skipper ultimately became the mayor of Aiken. And we who knew him all were in shock.
Because he was a wild child.
He was a wild child. And my brother was wild, but not nearly. But we had Buddy Coleman.
He used to own a store here.
Yeah, he owned Coleman shoes. So we just had a whole neighborhood full. And Thomas Weeks was down by South Boundary.
And his father was the mayor of Aiken for 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm. So we ran in a pretty strong neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my family, well, my mother was a Cushman, and she married her husband. Well, it was a Lunger, and so anyway, he was from up in Pennsylvania. But my grandmother had my mother, who was named Ida Mae Holley, Ida Mae Lunger. Anyway, so my mother married a Holley, and so I grew up on a farm outside of Aiken, out there by off Whiskey Road on Powderhouse Road.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved out there when I was like 5, but we had a little house in Aiken before that. And so we just grew up in this town and went to school together. We got, right now, today, we're having like a little reunion of our girlfriends from Aiken High. And it's just, and the Holleys have just been here forever. And that Holley building downtown used to be the Holley Hardware. And when the hotel, commercial hotel, the Holley Hotel, and all that. There's a bunch of Holleys, and some of them are distant cousins, and some of them are just real cousins. So lots of cousins.
Yeah.
And Margie and I are third cousins, and we have another cousin, Duke Sudlow, that lives here. He's our cousin too. And that's about the only Cushmans. But we have the Cushmans and the Holleys, because my mother was a Cushman, my daddy, of course, was a Holley. So it's kin to everybody that used to live here. I guess they're kind of dying off now.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the drive-in, the Fox drive-in.
Yeah.
That would have been during when the 50s and when the plant came, when the bomb plant came.
The bomb plant.
The bomb plant.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that was a big change for Aiken. We had 150,000 people came into Aiken to build the plant.
What caused a little consternation is that the first people that came
They
were builders, laborers.
Yeah.
So all the Aikenites went, this is what's coming with the bomb plant.
the construction people, and they had this place called Robin's Trailer Park. And so my folks lived out on the farm, which wasn't that far from it, on Powderhouse Road. And the trailer park didn't have proper sewage and smelled to high heaven every time. So they were just trashy people. I mean, I hate to say that, but they were. And once the plant was built, they all moved out, and it was just fine.
And then we had, but it just caused this mega upheaval to, you never told anybody that you were friends with somebody that was from the bomb plant, because that just caused your grandmother to get crazy.
Well, anyway, I think though, once that it all kind of settled down, we were all thrilled. We had all these really brilliant people here. And my sister was 4 years older than me, and she went to Aiken High School with the scientists' sons and daughters. I mean, and that Oppenheimer movie kind of brought back a lot, because it was the conflict that he didn't want the hydrogen bomb built. And yet Aiken got the hydrogen bomb. That's what they made at the plant.
They made the heavy water for the
hydrogen bomb.
But I just came from Santa Fe, so I know all that other part of that story.
I know it. And anyway, that's interesting that, we had all these really brilliant people and going to high school with their kids.
Yeah.
But I have another back there memory kind of thing. My brother and I were obviously right on the railroad tracks. I'm changing the subject.
That's
sorry.
fine.
And the trains would come and bring the polo ponies in, and it would stop. The engine would stop in front of my house, and then they would offload the ponies, and they would go down through the park, the Marion Street Park. Well, two things about this. My brother and I would always run out there to go see the engineers, and they would throw us a piece of juicy fruit gum.
No.
And that was the highlight of the week, or maybe month. But the other problem with this whole thing was that we'd go through that park, and horses will do what horses do. And that's where we played. And it was a job, but we all had to dig in and just do what we had to do to clean it up so we could get back to playing football and baseball out there. And it was just one of those funny things that who remembers a piece of juicy fruit from when you're 5 years old? But it was the most important gift I could get. And they loved to see us because we went straight out our house to over there. So.
Well, tell him.
Yeah, I went to St. Angela. I actually started there. I started in first grade when I was 5 years old. I don't know why, but they let me in. And so I went to Alma Grammar School, St. Angela. So I didn't even know.
I mean, I knew she was my cousin. I knew they lived upstairs, but we didn't really see them until we all went to junior high together.
7th grade. So
and then, I think you're my cousin. But anyway, then, we all went through high school together, junior high and high school. Yeah. We drove around in cars. We could get a license at 14, which I definitely did get my license at 14.
Everybody got theirs at 14.
Yeah. And that was a South Carolina law. And so growing up, we'd go to the root beer stand, the A&W root beer stand, and hang out and see if we could see some boy we liked. And maybe they'd come over and talk to us. And we just ride around Aiken and get in trouble. We didn't really. Oh, okay. So this is one thing I did.
Canteen.
We had the canteen down there by Eustis Park, and that was on Friday and Saturday night was open, and so all the teenagers would go down there, and they, we'd dance and hang out and whatever. So one night at the canteen, there was my good friend and Margie's too. Her name was Sarah Dykes. She was the Dykes, and the Dykes had the building and lumber company here. So Skip and Perry decided that they were going to go through the mansion, which was this house. And they had already been through here because the owners had left and it was vacant. And somehow Skip Perry and his friends had been in here and walked around and looked at the place. And so we're at a canteen, me and Sarah Dice. And Skipper and some of the boys came in and said, "Oh, well, the mansion is open. Let's go look in it." And it was at night. So me and Sarah and maybe a couple other girls, I don't remember who, we walked through the mansion and thought this was so fun and scary. And then the next day I took a few more other girlfriends. But guess what? One of the boys, during that sometime, it's probably a week, we would keep them going in and out of this place. And one of the boys started a fire in the middle of the floor. And he was still there. It was, anyway, I can't remember his name. And so then, of course, the police had found out we were all walking through here. And so then we're sitting in the high school class one day, and the principal starts calling out these names. Martina Twig, Olivia Holley, not her. Skip Perry, Tom, I don't remember who else. Come to the principal's office. It was about 20 of us. And so, okay, we had to go to the police station. And then our parents found out about us. We had to call our parents to come get us. And oh, brother, we all got it then.
And I was being a
She was being nature, but oh, well, we weren't. Wait, this was the house. We call it the mansion.
Yeah, we grew up calling it the mansion.
Yeah.
I don't really think that we were affected by it very much.
I think we were.
Oh, well, because I was, first of all, I was in a private school, and not many of the people that came were there. I have two quick private school stories, though.
Okay.
But at the corner of, I went to St. Mary's out off of Whiskey Road. No, I started on Richland Road. And then when I got to 5th grade, 4th grade, they moved us out to the campus at the convent. And one of my classmates was the daughter of the driver who drove the car, the chauffeur. He was the chauffeur for Rye Patch. Yes, he was. And I just think that's one of those interesting things. She was lovely. They didn't live here all year. They came and went and came and went. But the other story I want to tell you about is that my mother was a piano teacher. And my mother played for First Baptist, and taught everybody that ever played piano in town took from her. And one of her big students was Mrs. W.R. Grace. And Mrs. Mother went to Mrs. W.R. Grace's every morning from 9 to noon, and they played piano every single day. And so then part 2 of that story was that I was the May Queen in 8th grade in Aiken Junior High. And Mrs. Grace found out that I was that, and so she called Julia's.
Which was a very expensive dress shop.
The expensive place here, and called them and said that they were supposed to supply me with whatever dress I chose.
Yeah.
And so, and for years, Mother corresponded with her until she passed away. They played together for as long as she was in town. For years, every morning. They just had a ball. Anyway, she was a lovely, lovely lady. It's not someone that you would, think who had all that money. It was just, she was lovely. Andy Williams ended up buying her house.
Oh, yeah, I knew he lived there. Well, back to the question. That's okay.
All good.
Back to the question about how it affected us. I was in the 3rd grade when they told us that the plant was coming, and that they had bought New Ellington, Ellington, South Carolina, and then they were moving these people that had grown up in Ellington, South Carolina, like that house on Whiskey Road. What was the name of them? And they moved that gigantic house over here to Aiken. I forget the name of the ladies. But anyway, it did affect us because, in the 3rd grade, we found out they were coming. In the 4th grade, it was, all this influx of people. But in the 5th grade, we had double session schools because the schools were so busting at the seams that they had double session. And I went to Eustis Park for double session. And then once they built a bunch of new schools, and one was out there off Whiskey Road and Powderhouse Road. And so I told this story last night. And so I lived out on the farm, and I was designated to go to that new school. So I go in there for the 6th grade. I didn't know one single soul. And my mother calls up the superintendent of schools. Olivia is in that new school and doesn't know one single person, and she is not going to go there, and I want you to move her. So they moved me to Aiken Elementary, and that's where I went to 6th grade.
Her mother was a force to be reckoned with.
She was a Cushman.
Yeah, but she was.
She was a force.
The funny part about that is, of course, the influx of people required that we get a new high school. And so they built the high school, and it was a very new technology and everything. And it was one of the first buildings that I ever heard of that had the heating in the floor.
It did?
But what happened, there was a side effect of that, is it caused the students to want to be sleepy.
Really?
I didn't know that. So for years, they weren't sure how to manage that. Yeah, it was a big deal because they were so proud of the new technology, and it sort of backfired on them.
It was too comfortable.
It was, it was. But think about it, your feet warm.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I grew up at, it was 915 Park Avenue until the post office renumbered everything in town, and it became 807 Park Avenue. And I can remember, I'm going to tell this story. I can always remember my grandmother calling up Ephraim grocery store.
Yeah.
and getting her groceries delivered. So everybody that thinks all this Uber business or this Uber Eats is new, it ain't. She had her groceries delivered to her. Anyway, this house, this artifact, this is a picture of the home that I grew up in. This is a picture of the very, very, very early. And my grandparents, I think, got married in '06. So it was obviously after that, but it was after World War I. There was a vagrant that showed up. There were a lot of people, they were hobos, they were on the train and we were on the tracks, right? So you got hobos. They would always come by and want a meal, and I'd never failed that Grandma provided them a meal. And in the back steps of our house, there were two sort of concrete landings. And I can always remember them sitting there and putting their food up here and eating like they're on a table. But this one particular vagrant came by and apparently made a deal with my grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, to build to draw the house because it was freshly new, and even a photograph wasn't going to do, for that. So apparently they fed him for as long as it took him to draw this. And mother had it, I had it. It's too nice not for someone to at least know what it looked like before it became what it is. Eventually, there was a two-car garage put into one place, and then behind there was the house that my grandfather built for Willie Mae, and then over here it had the big transport truck garage. So, but this house, and as a child, you don't think you know these things, but I understood it to have South American mahogany floors. Now, who knows? I don't know, and I haven't been in the house. So, but anyway, it was built, and apparently Grandpa had enough money for them to build a nice one. Mm-hmm. He seemed to be wealthy. By the time it got down to me, nothing. No, I was too young to know.
Well, I remember we lived on Abbeville Avenue, which was close to downtown when So I remember us walking to Mom would take our hands and we'd walk downtown and go to the movie. And there was a Hans grocery store on the corner where Aiken Drug is. Used to be Aiken Drug, I guess it still is. Anyway, we would go and shop at Hans Grocery, and then it was just a little tiny town. And I remember we moved out of that house when I was 5 after my father came back from the war, and moved out to the farm. But I remember going to the movie, and then as we grew up and got in school, ours high school, more on our own, my grandfather would give us, we'd go by the Holley Hardware, and my grandfather would give us a quarter. We could go to the movie and get popcorn and Coke and get into the movie.
You can also get in the movie if you had an ivory soap wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
But we all knew it was here. But once we got old enough to understand, of course, I was still in private school, but when I went to public school, it was just a lot of people. You didn't distinguish who was and who wasn't.
Yeah.
And it became a nothing, as they say, a nothing burger.
Yeah.
But you knew there were a lot of folks that came from different places, but you were in class with them. You were learning what they were learning. So they're really, I don't think we had any.
No, well, we didn't as kids. Maybe the parents learned that. But then again, it was great for business.
Yeah, but you got to remember, if I was born in '43, I didn't even have an idea about all this until I was in the 7th grade.
Oh yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah, I think we were more affected because we weren't in the private schools because of my friends. We went to public school and had to have double session and all that stuff we just talked about. But before, like I was born in '42, and so before I was I mean, 3rd grade, 8 years old when we found out the plant was coming. That'd been 1950. Oh, that'd be 6 years, whatever. 52, I guess. And, we just knew something big was going to happen, but we didn't know quite what.
Yeah.
I remember, too, this is off the subject, too, but before the plant came, that huge, horrible explosion
Oh,
on
downtown.
Main Street,
Mhm.
and it blew up those 3 or 4, do you know the story of that?
Yeah, the gas explosion.
The gas
Yeah.
explosion. And so my family owned the Holley Hardware. But those 3 buildings before the Holley Hardware, which one was Platt's Drugstore,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and those and the gas company, and McCrary's, which was a department, was like the general store, McCrary's. Well, that blew completely up, and that poor lady was trapped under the timber and whatever. But I mean, it killed
heard
a lot
that
of
story.
people.
Well,
Yeah, but we heard it all the way out of the farm. We heard this explosion. Then, of course, the brothers start calling my daddy, and we came uptown to see and we stood across the street and watched that thing fire going. And it blew up those 3 or 4 buildings right before it got to the Holley Hardware. And there was a big brick firewall between the Holley Hardware and the Platt's Drugstore. And if you go in the Holley building now, you can see that where the soot is, and it was singed right before it got to the Holley Hardware. It didn't get blown up. So that was the brothers' main concern, that it was going to hit the Holley Hardware, but it didn't.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
we were told the story. May Perry, Skipper Perry's mother, piled a bunch of us in the back of a pickup and drove us downtown because everybody knew about
Yeah,
this.
everybody was down there
And
watching it.
And we were like a block away. If it was over here, we were on this corner of that big intersection right there. And we could feel the heat. We could feel the heat over there. But the story was told about this poor woman that was caught under a
Timber.
big
Something.
timber, several timber. And the story that I heard was that she told the medic to give her
A shot.
a shot
Yeah, that's true.
to put her out of that.
Yeah. That was the horrible thing that
I
happened.
mean, that was just.
I mean-
but she was a much older lady. I
Yeah.
mean, she wasn't.
She worked at McCrary's.
For forever. So
Yeah, that was just horrible. But I mean, we stood across the street. I remember, where the
you felt the
commercial,
heat, sure.
where the commercial hotel is.
Mhm.
I'm sure the fire had burned down some by then because it was early in the morning when it happened, and I don't think we got there till maybe noon or maybe 10 o'clock, 11, whatever. But we would cross the street right by the commercial hotel watching the whole thing. Daddy brought us downtown, and it was horrible. And I'm scared to get out of gas now. Yeah, I won't be around gas.
But see, and I mean, that was just, we weren't reading the newspapers, of course, at that time. And there was no conversation in my house about it.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
Because I definitely could see that being a sort of talk of the town, something that would really linger nowadays in a comparable small town.
Yeah.
But I don't personally have any more questions. Is there
Okay.
anything else that you guys want to mention before we wrap things up? Anything we didn't cover?
No, I tell you, just a quick part of the neighborhood of kids that we grew up with. I mean, we had a swarm. There were about 8 or 9 of us. And one of the things we did was we would come to Hitchcock Woods and we would go all through Hitchcock Woods and end up on the golf course. Kids these days, I mean, that was dangerous. We have passed pits of snakes. We passed pits. We found water, moccasins and water. And I'm thinking, there's no reason for me to be alive. I should have been killed 40 times. But as kids, we did fun things like that, And this certainly.
We went down Sand River
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, that was fun to explore.
Yeah.
And
It was a great childhood.
yeah, it was.
And
Great
it
place to live and
And,
grow up.
Bonfire came, but it didn't really just completely up in there.
I did end up marrying a guy from
Oh,
whose
well.
father worked at on the Manhattan
Well.
Project, and Joe's dad did,
Mm.
and I ended up marrying that guy. He came in with the bomb plant.
Mhm.